Welcome everyone to SRX, the game. And in today's Getting Started guide, we're going to look at the different options within the game. How do we get started with the different customization options, the different racing types, as well as the different menu options that are available. The main menu contains 4 different tabs: the home screen, race, online, and then finally the options. Let's get started with the home screen. This is where you're going to find the career mode, as well as your achievements, and then a couple of different customization options. You can customize each of the cars within the different series, as well as your driver. Now we're going to have a video dedicated to the customization, so we'll skip by that for now and move on to the race screen. In the race screen, you're going to have the ability to choose a quick race. Now the quick race enables you to choose any of the available series within the game and race at the available tracks for that particular series. Also, you're going to have the ability to do a championship, which means choose a particular series and run through an entire season and see if you can win the championship. Finally, we have our split screen mode. That is going to be available if you are playing multiplayer on the same console, so that each of you can play on one screen. Let's now move on to the online tab. This is where you're going to find multiplayer options, where you can connect to a lobby and race against other players. Also found here is the news feed. This is where you're going to get updates from Monster Games on any changes or updates available in the game. And then the final tab is our options, which we're now going to take a little bit more in-depth look. The very first tab we find within the options menu is gameplay, where we'll set our difficulty preset. You see mine is set to advanced. Let's take a look at some of the other options. Now advanced is basically choose your own experience, where you can choose the AI settings, the driving aids you want to use, and so on. But if we hop back over to the casual, this is going to be for someone who is unfamiliar with racing games, doesn't really have any experience, and you can see across the bottom how this is going to adjust the various race settings and driving aids that are available. So again, this mode is designed to help somebody who is brand new and unfamiliar with driving a car or racing games in general. And then as we move our way to the right toward expert and advanced, the driving aids are going to be lowered and the overall difficulty is going to be increased. Okay, as we move from skilled into expert, you can see that at the expert level, driving aids are now down to 0 and the AI difficulty is now up to expert. And then the advanced tab is where you can choose a lot of your own options. So as we back out, here are some of the options that are available to us. Transmission, you have automatic or manual transmission. Automatic meaning that the computer will shift the gears for you. For example, the SRX cars have 4 gears that are available. So if you don't want to switch the gears or simply don't have any buttons available to assign for that, simply leave it on automatic and the game will take care of that function for you. Car identifiers. This is for the other cars on the track. By default, it can be a little tedious to try to keep up with where you are on the track. There are some things that will help you, and we'll see that once we get into the gameplay videos, but the position and name above each car will let you know what position they're in and whether or not you're fighting for position. The car shake effect. You can see I've got this all the way to the left, which is basically turned off or as low a setting as I can get. The farther to the right you get, the more visual shaking that you will see when you're going around the track in the car. As this sort of gets on my nerves, I move this all the way to the left to get rid of that. But by all means, play around with this and see what setting works best for you. AI difficulty. Again, this is where we come into the advanced preset because it is on custom and I have put it at 105, which is the maximum difficulty. For those of you who might be familiar with the previous Tony Stewart games or the NASCAR Heat series, this is a very similar system of difficulty used here within the game. If you do not wish to use the custom difficulty, you have options from the most difficult at legend, working your way down to easy. So for me, I'm simply keeping it at the max 105 for now, but as always, feel free to play around with that and see what works best for you. Damage, I've currently left it at the default of full damage, but you have the options for no damage or light damage as well, depending on the amount of realism that you're looking for. I will tell you, however, that based on my limited time within the game, remember it just released within a couple of hours of this recording, that even at full damage, the game is very lenient on the amount of contact you can have either with the wall or other cars before it really starts to have a big effect on the performance of your car. So keep that in mind when you're looking at these options. Race length, by default, I believe this is at 25%. I've moved it up to 100% because I want the full experience, but depending on the amount of time you have available to dedicate to the game, you may want to reduce this or simply leave it at the default. Coming to the tire wear and fuel consumption, this is another area that will look very familiar to those of you who have played the previous Tony Stewart games or the NASCAR Heat games. Currently, I've left it at normal, but you can go down from no tire wear or fuel consumption at all. You can have it less than normal or more than normal. And then finally, the flags. It will default to a very strict yellow, all the flags being on. I prefer to leave it at the relaxed yellow for the most part, or you can turn the flags completely off. Moving on now to the driving tab. This, again, information will flow over based on the preset we used under the gameplay tab. If you leave it at advanced, then it's going to show you as a custom preset, and this will give you the ability to set any of the driving aids that you would prefer. Maybe you need a little help with stability, but you don't necessarily want a lot of help from the computer. You have the ability to fully customize under the custom tab any and all three of these driving aids. Also available in this tab are the AI settings, and this is something that I will probably play around with quite a bit, but for now I've left everything at normal. The skill range is going to determine how fast or slow within a certain range that the cars are throughout the field. So you can see that we have a wide skill range, which means that the car will want to spread out more over the course of a long green flag run, or you can keep them all very close together with a narrow range. Stability is exactly that. How stable are the AI cars? And I can tell you at a normal stability, it is very hard to wreck them. They will get out of shape on normal stability, but it is very hard for them to wreck with player contact. However, I have found that there are multiple occasions throughout the race where the AI will contact each other and cause a wreck or indeed a crash. Recovery skill is what happens when they get out of shape. And again, under normal circumstances, I found that with player contact, it is hard to get them so out of shape that they end up wrecking. However, AI to AI contact seems to be a little bit more touchy with regards to causing wrecks. So if you're looking for more wrecks or less wrecks, then you can adjust this accordingly. Consistency. How consistent are they with their lap times? So if you want them to run very consistent lap times, lap after lap after lap, and not make a whole lot of mistakes, then you will either want normal or more consistent for the absolute best lap times. So basically this is how computer like do you want them to be? How robotic do you want to be in them to be in their driving? More consistent AI are going to hit their lines and run very similar lap times, lap after lap after lap, whereas less consistent AI are going to be more human-like in that they're going to make more mistakes. They're going to miss their line more often, and their lap times are going to vary quite a bit more. So you can actually use this as a bit of a difficulty aid if you want them to be a little bit more difficult or a little bit less difficult. Then your starting spread is something very similar to the skill range that we looked at earlier, but the skill range is more about long green flag runs over the course of a race, whereas the starting spread is more about how they behave at the green flag, whether this is a start of the race or a restart after a caution. So if you want them spread out more, maybe you're seeing too many wrecks and too much contact among the AI, then you can use expanded. This will have them a little bit more room in between each other. Or if you really want them to jam in together, very little room amongst them and have a lot of very heavy fighting for position on the starts and restarts, then compressed is the way you want to go. And then finally we get to the tire effect. Tire effect at normal, I have seen not a lot of tire wear based on the length of the races. So for example, if the length of the race is around an hour, I have run laps, for about 10 to 15 minutes, and the tire wear was pretty minimal. So if you're looking for more tire wear, more effect, more drop off in speed from that, remember, we're talking about the AI here. So you're going to go up to more effect. If you're looking for the AI to not be as affected by the overall tire wear, then you're going to want to use less effect. So this is a way that you can adjust based on your driving style and how the AI are behaving over the course of a run as opposed to your behavior. All right, then we get to incident frequency. Again, on normal, I am seeing, I would say probably one incident every 5 to 10 laps, give or take, on normal. So if you're looking for more incidents, then more frequent is the way you want to go. And then, of course, less frequent should give you less contact. Overall, I'm probably going to be leaning more toward less frequent because in each and every race, that short race that I've done, I've had, for the most part, at least one caution. So this is something that I'll be looking to adjust as we move forward. All right, so as we go back to the impact forces, this is something about how the AI behave when you make contact with them. Under normal conditions, again, it is, as I've mentioned a few times, it is very hard to wreck them. You almost just have to wreck them on purpose in order to make it happen. So adjust this according to what your preferences are. And then finally, the AI cars in practice. Now you can completely turn this off so that when you're in, say, quick race, preparing for a race in the practice session, there are no other AI cars on the track whatsoever, and you have the track all to yourself, or you can have a few cars there or normal. Now remember, there's only going to be somewhere around 15 cars or so if you're talking about the SRX series, and for me, it was never crowded at any time, so I've simply left it at normal. But again, if you're looking for more time alone on the track, then either drop this down to a few or take it all the way down to none. The next three tabs from Player 1 controls, Player 2 controls, and input mapping, we're going to be skipping by in today's video because I'll be doing a separate video dedicated specifically to the control scheme. I use a Logitech G920 wheel and pedal set, so we'll again have a separate video dedicated to those settings. So for today, we're going to move on by those to this display tab. Now at the top of the screen, keep in mind, I am playing through the Steam platform on PC. So if you're playing on the Xbox or the PlayStation, then your options may vary. So for me, I'm playing on a 1080p monitor using full screen and have turned the VSync off. By default, it was on, but I went ahead and turned that off. And then the screen number, I have two screens that I run through the PC. So it's asking me, do I want to play on the primary screen or the secondary screen? Now, as far as the quality presets, my PC is 6 or 7 years old at this point, using an i5 processor, again, from 6 or 7 years ago, and a GTX 1070 graphics card from NVIDIA, so definitely do not have the most powerful PC. However, by default, it had me listed at medium. I cranked that up to high. You can also go to custom and adjust any and all of these to your liking. But for me, under high, I had no issues whatsoever with the frame rate. I was getting, the lowest I was getting was somewhere mid 80s. So I can't imagine very many people are going to have issues with cranking the quality preset to high or possibly custom so that you can work with this. Okay, moving on now to the audio tab. Now, the first thing I did was turn the music completely off. That's for recording purposes. YouTube definitely doesn't like you using various different music that may be copyrighted within your videos, so that's the reason why I've turned that off. The effects I have left up. That is going to give you things like the beep that you hear whenever you move between different screens and choose different options and so on. I'll probably end up turning that down a little bit eventually, but then we get into the fine-tuning options. So these are the sounds and how well you want to hear them on the track. So the player car, as best I can tell, this is basically the engine sound. So how much do you want to hear the player? What you're looking at right now are the defaults. This is how it all started for me, and I haven't yet had enough time to really get in here and do a lot of tweaks for the most part. Other than skid and road noise, I did turn that up a little bit because I do want to try to hear the tires as best I can, because that is one of the best sources of feedback to tell me how the car is doing. Collisions, again, somewhere around halfway here. I don't like the collisions to be up too loud because I find that they get a little annoying and really overdone if I get those the volume too loud. And then the announcer and crowd, I have turned up to the max volume. If I don't get this up pretty high, then I won't even be able to hear the announcer or the crowd at all. So again, personal taste with these, and most of these are at default or pretty close to default for me. Now under advanced, you've got a couple of options here that are pretty interesting. The treble and bass, again, these are all default for me, and but I will probably turn down the reverb just a little bit and probably turn up the bass a little bit to help out with the engine sound. But again, it's all about what you are interested in hearing from the cars. The final two tabs within the options menu are race format and the credits. So we'll focus our attention on the race format section simply because this is where a lot of valuable information is contained if you're not already familiar with the format of the races. At the top of the screen is the SRX format, which uses a 3-race format. So this is the section that's going to let you know how your starting position for the races are going to be determined, as well as how points are awarded in each of the events. For example, SRX uses a timed race format for the first 2 races, and then a lap-based format for the third and final race. Then as we scroll down a little bit, we get into the heat race format. For those of you who may not be familiar with that format, you will be using heat races to determine your starting position and which main event you will be in. And then we get into the entire alphabet soup of main events. And depending on your finishing position, you really want to work your way into the A main or the main event itself. So that will do it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and hopefully this getting started guide has helped you with SRX, the game.